Hello, everyone. All right, so I have not done a YouTube video in a while, but I have my own place now, and I wanted to. Sorry, my glasses are crooked, broken, but I wanted to talk about Nick Spencer's run on the Amazing Spider-Man. This is like going totally unscripted. I do want to continue with my Avengers reviews, though, that I was starting to do the Brian Michael Bendis run because I now finally, after like almost 2 years of me saying I was going to review House of M to keep the story going, I now have House of M. So I am actually able to do that, and I should be able to review it consistently, I think, up until volume 9, and then I'm missing a couple in there. I'm also going to need to get Secret Wars, but that's a little further down the road. But essentially, I wanted to come here to talk about Nick Spencer's The Amazing Spider-Man. Now, across my wall here, and why I don't have any of the books in front of me, across the wall I have lined my the from like the wall to the ceiling with comic books of Nick Spencer's run, starting from the Free Comic Book Day issue all the way up until 19. And unfortunate for me, issue 19.HU that was supposed to come in, Diamond kind of got in the way of some of the orders or something over at my local comic shop. But essentially, this run, even the first 5 issues, proves to me that Nick Spencer understands Spider-Man, and this is truly where his stride is. And I can already say within the first 19 issues that is already better than any of the stuff that Dan Slott did, in my opinion. And I know a lot of people might get up in arms hearing that, but that's just how I feel. I tried out Dan Slott's Spider-Man. I read like the first big chunk, big time, for a good long while. I had most of the single issues of when it was being branded as Brand New Day, and unfortunately, I wasn't. I just couldn't get into it. Like the first 3 issues of Brand New Day were really solid. I will give it that. Like, I am not a big fan of Joe Quesada's mandate to take away the marriage. I am not a big fan of all the stuff that happened there. But it was just kind of, I don't know, like it was okay from time to time. I will say my favorite Dan Slott story that he wrote during that entire tenure was New Ways to Die, which was the introduction of Anti-Venom, all the stuff with Mr. Negative. The Spider-Man PS4 game actually felt very inspired by what he did with that. But that being said, Nick Spencer understands Spider-Man to a ridiculous extent. Now, the last time that I was reading Spider-Man Monthly, which like it hasn't been until recently I've been able to get back into reading monthly. But the last time I was reading Spider-Man Monthly, I think was when Brian Michael Bendis was doing Ultimate Spider-Man before Peter died. I get that that's in like an alternate universe or stuff, but like that was like my first exposure to Spider-Man, and the only reason I dropped that was, first of all, because Peter Parker died, and I wasn't sure if I should have jumped on the Miles Morales bandwagon, which I now realize I should have, and I'm trying to catch up on all that now while reading the new series. But like month to month, it was a roller coaster for me, like an emotional roller coaster, and I absolutely love that series. It's to me, it's just hands down my favorite Spider-Man run ever. But Nick Spencer's run is getting close. For those of you who might not be aware of Nick Spencer and the things that he has written, like if you're a big comic book fan, I'm sure you know about Secret Empire, which was a very, very, how do I put it? It was very down the middle, but everybody agrees that it ended very lackluster, and it felt like Nick Spencer like dragged it out for way too long. And I can understand that. And quite honestly, I just don't think that Nick Spencer has a good stride with like the greater Marvel universe. Like the way he writes Spider-Man and the characters surrounding Spider-Man is fantastic. Like I think the best book that he had done up until this point of him doing the Amazing Spider-Man was the Superior Foes of Spider-Man, which some of you may know was like a 17 issue. I don't want to say miniseries because that's not very many, more like a maxi, where he just kind of told the story about a bunch of piece of shit losers, including like Boomerang, the Shocker, the new female version of Beetle, Overdrive, Mach 5, which was the old Beetle. It was all really good stuff. It was emotionally compelling, but on top of it being emotionally compelling, it was hilarious. First of all, that is one thing I will always credit Nick Spencer for, is being able to make the world of Spider-Man, like, it's almost like what Adam McKay does with his movies, where it's like, I mean, like, it's not like exactly like that, where like every character is an idiot, but like Superior Foes of Spider-Man feels very much like that. Like, it almost feels like the early 2000s Will Ferrell movies, like Anchorman and stuff, where it's like every character is an idiot, and like the characters that are smart, like, keep losing somehow, because you, like, Chameleon was a very smart character in that book. um but then again, like, if you were to like adapt Superior Foes of Spider-Man, like if it would have somehow come out before the Will Ferrell movie started, I could have seen them like adapting that, and like Paul Rudd playing like Speed Demon, like that. Like, that's the kind of vibe that I pick up from it. And so, like, he wrote that 17 issue series. It's very well loved for the people who read it. And they were like, well, damn, I want this dude to write some more of that. And that came out back in 2013. And it wasn't until last year in the summertime when Nick Spencer finally got the jump on Spider-Man after he was done with Secret Empire. He took a big, long break to just read a bunch of Spider-Man because he wanted to be very familiar with the character. And then so now we've gotten thrown back into this, and he's killing it. He is completely killing it. And here in a moment, I will get into why I believe it's better than the Dan Slott run. But like, the first issue hooked me because, first of all, Peter and Mary Jane back together. Now, okay, I can understand the people who are like, I don't want Peter to be with Mary Jane. That's fine. But my thing is, it's like we have all this pre-established continuity running from the 60s to the 90s on them being together and them being married, and then they got separated, and then J. Michael Straczynski brought them back together, and then at the end of J. Michael Straczynski's run, he was forced to do the deal with the devil thing, because if they would have done it as a divorce, Peter would have seemed too old. And like, for me, it just really bothers me because like I'm just used to seeing those two together. In fact, I think since this run is getting up there for me, is one of my favorites. One of my favorite runs, probably my number 2 up until this point, was J. Michael Straczynski's Spider-Man, where Peter was an older guy and he was a school teacher and he was married. And like, there was like interesting villains created for that series. And of course, it had its faltering point. Sins Past was pretty bad. I think that's the first book I ever read where I felt dirty after reading it. Like, it was really dumb. But it, like, that's just what it felt like. And so when I start to get into all of this crazy shenanigans stuff about this new run and how he is going about it with the Mary Jane relationship, he's introducing the new villains, or the new villain, because we don't really have any other new villains just yet, and like bringing back like old 90s characters that nobody has bothered using. Like, this book feels very much like it should have come out in the 90s, primarily because of like, in the first arc we get the Tri-Sentinel. The Tri-Sentinel was like a Spider-Man villain, and like X-Men, of course, but like a dude who fought Spider-Man back in like the early 90s, and like he gets pulled back into this, and it's like, like at first I was like, what in the hell are you doing, dude? Like it wasn't bad, but it was just like, why are you pulling all these random ass villains like out of nowhere? And then like he's been consistently doing it. Like the Black Ant being in this book, Eric O'Grady, who was originally like the third Ant-Man, that's really cool. I that kind of stuff I really dig. Or like Spider-Man against Taskmaster. All of this stuff going on there is really good, and like Aunt May doesn't come off as annoying at all. In fact, if I did have any complaint about the book, it's that Aunt May's kind of underused and she feels like an afterthought. But like when she's there, she's great. It just kind of feels like I feel like Peter would be more involved with Aunt May at this point. But then again, maybe that's what Nick Spencer is trying to say. Like he's an adult and he's doing his own thing, and like if he runs into Aunt May, sure, that's great. But like any other adult, he kind of strays away from the people who raised him and lives his own life while visiting them occasionally. But then again, we're also only about 20 issues into this. More than 20 if you want to count the Point HU for the Hunted series. But it's really solid, and I really, really dig it so far. We'll get into what some of the stories are here in a little bit, but I would also like to talk about the Dan Slott and Nick Spencer thing. I want to talk about why I think it's so different and why Nick Spencer's run is honestly better. And that is that Dan Slott, I'm not going to discredit him for saying that he was a Spider-Man fanboy that got to live the Spider-Man fanboy dream of actually writing it. He knows a lot of things. He knew a lot of crazy stuff, like crazy, weird pulls from back in the day. Like I remember reading the first arc of his Big Time, and when Peter went to go work at Horizon Labs for the first day, and Aunt May, is like watching him, and she looks up and she's like, "Ben, he did it," and that's because of like a panel in like the first appearance of Spider-Man. Uncle Ben had mentioned that Peter was going to be a very important scientist someday, and he was going to be an inventor because of his brain. And like that's like a really weird specific pull from that one panel that made a really good moment. And like, but Dan Slott, I take it he was more of a fan of Spider-Man back in the 70s. And why that is because a lot of Dan Slott's decision inside of that run, especially the importance of Dr. Octopus, is very like 70s Spider-Man. But also that being said, in the 70s, Peter was like, and nobody's ever really sure, but he was somewhere between like 19 and 23. And like he's still kind of figuring life out, like he was like a college student who was just trying his best to do the superhero thing and keep up with all of his classes. And so that being said, Peter would kind of embarrass himself a lot because since he was in college and there's much more of a social landscape, it was like all eyes on him. And so like there's moments where like when we get into the Parker Industries thing with Dan Slott Spider-Man, Peter's wearing this tuxedo and he needs to go out there and give some sort of speech for his company, but his pants are unzipped. Peter is not that incompetent. Like he's supposed to grow up as the series goes on, whether they let him age or not. He needs to learn from his lessons, and like he has himself together. It's just like physically and like with embarrassing situations like that, they would never happen. But like Peter, up here is where all the struggle should be, like now that he's like an adult. And like I can understand if like the whole pants being unzipped joke was back in the 70s, but even then I don't think that ever really happened back then. But Dan Slott is writing 70s Spider-Man now, and I would like to think Spider-Man in the series is probably almost 30. Like he's young, but he's not like 40 something, like he's probably about 30, like in his prime. And so he just kind of writes Spider-Man as like this kind of character where like he's a kid. He writes him as a kid. And so leaving that whole run, I stopped reading it. I just couldn't I just couldn't get behind it. There was a couple stories that Dan Slott did that I liked, but just the way he writes characters fundamentally wrong. And so when we jump into Nick Spencer, who, like I said, had taken an entire year retreat to go off and read Spider-Man so he could do this run, he gets it. In the first, from issues 1 to 5, he sold me on whatever else he does because he gets Peter. Like, let's see here, we got a comment. Chip Darcy Spider-Man life story is great because he ages in real time. Yes, as a matter of fact, I just got issue 2 of that, and I do want to talk about this in another video because, dude, I dig the shit out of this. First of all, Mark Bagley on Spider-Man art's great. I didn't get to read Chip Zdarsky's Spectacular, but I heard that it was very good, and that's mostly why I picked this up, that and the Mark Bagley art, because he's fucking stunning. But, this is something that I do want to talk about. In fact, I might actually do a video pretty soon. So yeah, thank you, Scottish Spinneret, for commenting. But yeah, just like Nick Spencer in the first 5 issues, he did this story called Back to Basics. And first of all, he immediately tied it in with his Superior Foes run because it's so well loved. He immediately did this thing where it's like, yeah, like Fred Boomerang is rooming with Peter. And like Peter says he's doing it to keep an eye on him because after the whole like Secret Empire thing, like Fred's criminal record was expunged. And like I would really dig the shit out of it if they actually did Superior Foes again, the Sinister Six, in this Spider-Man run, because I absolutely love it. And the first 5 issues, though, getting off track, the first 5 issues was super solid. And why I can say that is because what Nick Spencer did is he took all of the irresponsibility that Dan Slott's version of Spider-Man had, all of the childlike nature, and made Peter pay the price for it. Like when Doc Ock was inside of Peter's body in the Superior Spider-Man run, he got a PhD, and that's how he became the head of like this big company, Parker Industries. And then when Peter came back to his own body, he just saw that he had a PhD that somebody else had earned and went, cool, and ran with it. That's not what Peter Parker would do as like a fundamental piece of his character. And so when I see that he immediately he fixes that, and like Nick Spencer gets Spider-Man's PhD ripped away from him, so he has to go back to college, that's like a real adult problem. Like imagine like having like a degree under your belt, and then like it's somehow like there was some sort of problem in the college that you were in, and you technically didn't earn it, so you have to go back. Like that's like such like a specific problem that feels like a Peter Parker thing, where like it's not even a problem for him because he loves learning and loves being in the world of science, but like it's just like a slight taking away from his character. It's like a I'm losing the word right now. Hindrance. Like it's not even that important, but like it's just another thing to make Peter stress about. Like it's another adult problem. And also another thing he does is he makes Kingpin a Spider-Man villain again, which is very important for me because me personally, since I was a fan of Spider-Man first, then I moved on to everything else. Pretty much what he did was since Kingpin is the mayor of New York, he's kind of giving Kingpin this tactical plan of where he is like, okay, here's what we're going to do. We are going to make everybody hate Spider-Man because Spider-Man is a person who relies on what other people think of him, and he almost has anxiety. And so you have to kind of make him, how do I put it? You have to make him feel alienated. to sort of get at him that way. And then eventually, when something happens to him and everybody else hates him, nobody can show up and save the day for him, like Daredevil or something. Which Chip Zdarsky's Daredevil is also dope. For the one dude who commented, just wanted to shout out to you, Chip Zdarsky. Just a great writer. But he does that in the first issue. He also pits Spider-Man against Mysterio right away. Like there's like this whole alien invasion, and like literally all of Marvel's heroes at the time are there, which I do think that battle at the beginning of the book is going to kind of date it, because when people, like, if everything is normal right now, it's like how Marvel was back before Secret Wars. Like everything is just going good, and you have all your characters. You don't have the Disney Fox acquisition going on. So that way, like, you don't have Disney being all butthurt about what characters can be used and what characters can't, because you don't want to give the movie studio too much to work with. You have all of those things taken away, and so like we have all the characters here. But in that first issue of Spider-Man, when all those heroes are in the battle, Reed Richards and the Invisible Woman aren't there with the other two members of the Fantastic Four. Wolverine is Old Man Logan. You have Jason Aaron's Thor, where he's got the gold arm and the gold Mjolnir. I guess the Guardians will always kind of be cemented as like the main five from the movie. Let's see here. We got another comment. Nick Spencer brought Spidey back to the pre-One More Day era. Is he building up to Mephisto being undone? Okay. I was actually about to get to that, because this is leading into the villain at the end of this first issue. But like he pits Spider-Man against a classic villain though, and then brings Spider-Man and Mary Jane back together, and then introduces a new interesting villain. And we're not even sure of what this dude's name is. We just know he's like a centipede demon covered in gauze, and like. Okay, and this is where we get into the One More Day thing being undone. I'm about to click everything together here for you, dude. So, Spider-Man and Mary Jane are back together. Okay? And right after that, we see a moment in the issue where, Mysterio is in court, and like Mysterio has this vision of the centipede thing coming and seeing him. And the centipede character, which we're still not sure of the name, says to Quentin Beck, "I dragged you out of hell. I can put you back in." Now, that's very important. That's a very important thing to keep in mind, because that means that we have a character who has something to do with hell that is a primary Spider-Man villain. And for those of you that don't know, the character of Mephisto is essentially Marvel's devil. And so he's going to, be involved somehow, no matter what, with this new character. And so I have this weird theory, because first of all, Peter and Mary Jane are back together. That's great. But then over in the Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, Aunt May has cancer. Out of nowhere. Which, like, I'm not discrediting Tom Taylor being, like, out of nowhere as if it's stupid. Because, like, I can see it. Aunt May's, like, a sick old woman and all that. And, and, of course, the Parker look. But, she, at the same time as Peter and Mary Jane reunite, Aunt May's dying. Which is an exact flip on what happened in One More Day. Because Aunt May was dying, Peter was trying to save her life, and so he sacrificed his relationship and his marriage with Mary Jane to let Aunt May live. But now that whole thing is being broken because Peter and Mary Jane are together now, so that means Aunt May has to die if they're going to be together. That's how that deal is undone. And I feel like it has to do with this fucking new centipede character. Because he can pull characters in and out of hell. And there's gotta be some sort of thing there. Like, there has to be a connection. Like, it can't all be coincidence, especially because in the new issue of Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man #5, Doctor Strange and Spider-Man do have a small moment where it's like a little inside joke. Like, I don't think it's stated as if they both remember, but there's a little side comment made that they can't be making deals with the devil. That's just a bad idea. Excuse me. But that really has me thinking. Like, like, and people in the comments, you guys can leave what you guys think it is, if that's just a coincidence, or if I'm not seeing an even bigger picture, or if I'm just, I just have too much time on my hands, or what. But I do feel that Nick Spencer and all of the Spidey writers right now are trying to undo it. Let's see here. We got another comment. I heard a theory from Instagram that the Centipede could be a demented version. Peter and MJ's onboard child from the Mephisto. Oh my God! That could be fucked up, because that would also be how it knows that Peter is Spider-Man. That would be so crazy. Like, Peter has a kid and it's a fucking centipede demon. Because it's also a multiple-legged bug creature. Like, oh my lord, dude. Scottish Spinner Egg. Go you. You subscribe and you need to comment more on my shit. I dig that. I dig that a lot. But yeah, just getting more into the whole Nick Spencer run, though, aside from that issue 1. His first arc is pretty much like Peter and Spider-Man get separated. They get pulled apart as two separate entities. And from there, Nick Spencer really explores the power and responsibility side of Spider-Man. Spider-Man is the power, Peter is the responsibility. And those two being separated, it's almost like he's fixing the character from how Dan Slott wrote him. And he is going to have both sides figure each other out. So when they come back together, they could be more wholesome. And they could be more of what classic Spider-Man was. It's almost like Nick Spencer was saying that in the 10 years that Dan Slott and various other writers wrote him, that whole big story that we did ever since A Brand New Day, it's kind of like... it's kind of like Nick Spencer is saying Spider-Man lost himself during that run, and we're gonna bring him back. And like with some of the comments that I got over here, it's literally almost like they are going to undo One More Day and forward and take it back to where it was, or at least make the characters aware of it so that way they can find a way to help it, because we keep getting all of these references and all of these different books throughout the years. Like, I remember Spider-Man Deadpool's first volume, Isn't It Romantic? Mephisto and Peter kind of have a little chat where he's like, I bet you feel empty inside, don't you? Or something along those lines. And Peter was like, what the hell are you talking about? Almost like a get out of my head moment. And they keep alluding to it, things here and there. And now we're getting it in the Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. We also just got it in the second arc of Nick Spencer's run. I think the arc was just called The Thieves Guild, if I'm not mistaken. But he's doing all these great things, and he has pulled Spider-Man back to where he's supposed to be. And quite honestly, this series... Okay, you could actually read this series. Like imagine if you were reading J. Michael Straczynski's Spider-Man all the way up to One More Day, and then don't read that, and then slide this book after what was the last arc he did before One More Day? I think it was The Other. You could read this before, like, after The Other, and like it would all feel very similar. I will admit that Nick Spencer, he doesn't quite write like he's writing a movie. Like, yes. Sorry, I was interrupted, but I don't mind being interrupted. I love hearing other people's stuff. Scottish Spinneret says Nick Spencer Spidey is the deconstructionist analysis of the past 10 years. I completely agree. I agree on that. I agree with that entirely. Like, it's deconstructing what Dan Slott did and also analyzing the character of Spider-Man to kind of find like a happy medium where like this book across the board, I mean, like some people just don't like the style of writing or some people don't like Ryan Otley's art, which is fantastic. By the way, him, Huberto Ramos, Chris Pacello, they've all been doing a great job on this book. But like, if you ask me, I think this is probably the best Spider-Man we have gotten in a while. Like, I can wholeheartedly say that. It's almost like the past 2 years have been this like weird renaissance for Spider-Man because you've had his appearances in Infinity War. You have had the Spider-Man PS4 game. You had Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. We also got the new run from Nick Spencer. We also got the run from Tom Taylor. We've also got Chip Zdarsky's Spider-Man Life Story. So many great things for the character of Spider-Man right now, and I absolutely love everything that's going on. But yeah, that's just really how I feel about everything right now. Like, Nick Spencer understands Spider-Man. He understands that Peter is a character that really does have to find balance and do what the responsible thing is. And like he's also trying to figure out what the responsible thing to do in certain situations is, and he has to make sacrifices. Like in this new event Hunted, which when that's all done and I've read all of it, I will go over it like as its own thing because I am absolutely loving it. But where was I going with that? The whole run has really brought Spider-Man back to where he needs to be. Oh, I'm sorry. I just remember what the moment was that I was going to talk about. There was a moment in Hunted, which is like at the beginning of the story, where Peter gets word about the dome in New York City, and he knows that Billy Connors has been kidnapped, and he has like a really bad fever, and Mary Jane is trying to take care of him at home. But instead of just dealing with like just staying home and trying to rest it off, he knows people are in danger and that Kirk Connors' son is in danger. And so he forces himself while very sick, stuffed nose, like feels just really, really bad and his body's really weak. He forces himself to go out there and try to find Billy Connors because it's his responsibility to do so. It's that I love the great power comes great responsibility line. But the way that they worded it in Captain America Civil War, as a matter of fact, it's a quote from Captain America where he says, "If I see something going down, I can't look the other way." And like, it's not like Captain America is going to come out of nowhere and just save Billy Connors. That's not going to happen. But Spider-Man's world, because they're so down to earth and all of the supporting cast and characters kind of have a connection to each other, they almost feel obligated to do so. And just I absolutely love this run. We got one more comment here. It says it's the rebirth of Spider-Man throughout all mediums for the character, a golden age. Dude, I completely agree with you. Like, I can't see it as any other thing. But I think that will be it for this video today. No clue if I'm going to be doing another one. But you know what? That's fine. I just have to reread through more of the books that came out this week that I had gotten. Coming up, though, you guys should expect a Donny Cates Guardians Thanos Cosmic Ghost Rider video. I just want to group it all together, get it out of the way, and the Infinity Wars. I also want to do a couple of videos on Brian Michael Bendis's Avengers run. I am also really hoping to kind of do a new project, which is more of like a documentary series. It probably won't be me live on camera. It'll probably just be edited videos about quotes and interviews and things like that. But that being said, this has been Larry Stahl here on my channel, aptly named Larry Stahl. If you liked the video, please like it, comment more, or comment things that you think about this series, and I'll try to get to as many of the responses as I can. I absolutely love talking to people about comic books, and I just wanted to get back onto my YouTube shtick so that way I can get going on this. But that'll be all from me for right now. So please like, comment, and subscribe, and I will chat with all. We got one more comment. I'll let this one fly. The villains Nick is using are the villains that have died. This is hinting at the Mephisto deal and the idea of death. I completely agree, dude. I completely, like, Kingpin has died before in Bendis's run. Mysterio died in Kevin Smith's Daredevil, Guardian Devil. Craven the Hunter died way back when in Craven's Last Hunt. Yeah, this is true. Like, I agree with you 100%. But anyways, one more time, that'll be all from me today. So thanks for watching and commenting, and I will try to get another video up as soon as I can. Thank you.